Hello, I'm Dr. Stephen Hassan with another episode of my podcast, Cult Conversations, the Influence Continuum with Steve Hassan. And I have an old friend and colleague with me today, Nori Muster. Nori and I think, she was just telling me before we started recording that we met first in 1997. Shortly after her first book came out called Betrayal of the Spirit. This is the hardback original one. And here's a picture of Nori when the book came out. And I understand you have a newer version, a paperback you can hold up. And very important, good book. Let me just get into it. You were a member of the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, or ISKCON, for 10 years, from 1978 to 1988, and worked in the group's PR office. So we're going to talk about PR and maybe get into the cult of Trump sometime in here. But let me just say, after you left the group, you earned a Master's of Science degree from Western Oregon University, and you work with juvenile sex offenders. You're a writer, researcher, and let me just say you've also written a bunch of other good books. Maybe you can hold them up as I mention them. Let's see. Child of the Cult. Great. And then Cult Survivor's Handbook. Great. And then you wrote your own I Ching and positive thinking book, Dreaming Peace.
Yeah.
And I've seen you at cult conferences. You've been really wonderful, wanting to help people who are thinking of joining Krishna, or, families who are worried about a loved one who gets into it. I recently interviewed a colleague and friend, Steve Gelberg. And I should say that there's a documentary called Monkey on a Stick. And this is the hardback of Monkey on a Stick. Good one. And Steve Gelberg, who I interviewed about his involvement as well as his forthcoming book on music and psychedelics. I saw Joe Zimhart in the docuseries as well. It was very well made, and I hope that they find a platform for it to come out. And now we're in a world of epidemics of cult mind control. We really are there, and we know from history that when there's a lot of economic instability and change and political instability, people ask bigger questions. What's my life? What's my purpose? How do I live? What am I doing? And so, and cults are preying on people's human desires to understand and be the best person they can and to know where they fit into the world. So with that, I'd like to welcome you to my podcast. And it's so important, I think, for you to share a bit about the Krishnas. I bet most people think of George Harrison and My Sweet Lord and some of the other songs and such. But take it away, Nori Muster, please.
Thank you, Dr. Steve. I'm so grateful to be here. This is really a good chance to talk these things out.
Yeah, where to start? I know that we want to talk about Prabhupada being the founder and the drugs and the abuse of children and so take a moment, and where would you like to start today?
Well, after I left, I went to graduate school.
Yeah.
And before I joined, I was working with juvenile delinquents in college.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I left ISKCON, I was thinking, what do I want to do? What do I want to do? What do I want to do? And I thought, I want to go back to juvenile delinquents. Because I had a really rough adolescence, and I know how to talk to juvenile delinquents because I was one. And I ended up, when I went to get my, not internship, but it was like to work in the field, the only place that I could get hired as a volunteer was at the juvenile hall. And when, because the other private companies have confidentiality issues and they don't want to hire students as volunteers. So I worked at the juvenile hall again which was wonderful.
Mm.
And the only opening they had was for the Juvenile Sex Offender Ward. And this was in 1990. And nobody understood what child abuse was back then. Like
Right.
that was before the Catholic priests were exposed and things like that. People just didn't believe it existed. So
Right.
there I was working with all these juvenile sex offenders, and I was the art teacher. So we did art, and I would give them directions like do a map of your life, or, just.
I'm gonna interrupt you, darling. Please forgive me, but we only have an hour, and I want to hear your story about how you.
Okay. Well, anyway, okay. So the way it worked out was that after I learned all about child sex abuse,
yes.
I went back to ISKCON to help, stay at the Pyramid House and do and I met the children, and they told me they were abused in India. And if I hadn't have had that degree and understood what they were talking about, well, anyway, when they told me that they were abused in India, I was really surprised. I did not know about that. I had no idea. But because of my training in grad school, I felt called to help these people. And I spent like a year and a half just talking to them and understanding their stories and what happened. And it was really enriching for me, because I felt like, well, now I have something that I really care about.
Right.
And that was the children. And it still makes me cry. I can't understand why someone would do that to children.
Yeah.
What happened in ISKCON.
Good people have very big difficulty understanding criminal behavior and malignant narcissists and such.
Yeah.
But I didn't, you commented that you were a juvenile delinquent, but I thought you came from a nice family.
Oh, I did.
So I don't know why you would label yourself as a juvenile delinquent. Did you get into trouble with the law, darling?
A couple times.
Oh, okay. So that explains that. Anyway, let's move forward to,
yes.
I mean, you really have a body of knowledge and experience that I would like you to share with people. And we're living in this moment in 2025 where we're seeing just an epidemic of mind control cults and the cult of Trump. And,
God.
And we want to educate people that intelligent people can be hacked and they can get recruited and indoctrinated into these totalistic belief systems and follow bad actors who claim to be doing God's will, and onward and onward. Take it away.
Well, a lot of this, it really triggers me because it brings back my cult memories where the gurus got away with anything. You weren't allowed to criticize them, because then you were a demon and you were going to have to go to hell, and your family, all your, like they really went out of the way to make people ignore their crimes.
Right.
And working in the PR office, like Mukunda, my boss, Mukunda, he was the head of our department.
Mm-hmm.
He would just tell me like, oh, it's just a bad apple. As soon as, Hans Duda's gone, everything's going to be all right. And I believed him, and he believed it. Yeah. We were all kind of pulled into that. And so part of our job was just to defend those horrible criminal people who took over once they were like biting, they wanted that power. They wanted Prabhupada to just go away so they could run everything. And then that happened. And when they took over, it went from being more of a Hinduish thing to a cult. It just, as soon as those people took over, and it was already happening before they took over.
Yeah, there was hash smuggling and drug smuggling, I think, when Prabhupada was around. And when he was around, there was a lot of deceptive fundraising. Because as a Muni, I would run into Krishna fundraisers.
I would run into Munis.
Yeah, and we would be competing.
We'd be at the same place competing for donations.
Right. So, because, cults copy from each other. It's like, wow, they make a lot of money. We could do that too. We can have, people out selling flowers or whatever. And, so there were all kinds of problems. So the drug smuggling, later LSD, there was the sexual stuff.
The LSD was very early on.
I see.
And the guru who was taking the LSD was doing it for quite a long time before they finally kicked him out. Well, they didn't even kick him out. He just left on his own. Well, I guess they did kick him out. I don't know. It's always something. But every one of those guys got bad.
And what was our understanding of George Harrison, just to go to the most famous promoter of ISKCON?
Yeah, I love him. I met him in person one time. It was so amazing. He came to the door. He came to our door looking for Mukunda. And I knew Mukunda was out that day. And he said, oh, my God, he really wants to talk to you. You've got to call him. And he said, I'll be here another couple days. So he called him from the Beverly Hills Hotel. He called Mukunda, and they talked for a long time and got caught up. And he was, because Mukunda knew him from England. When they first, Shamasundar and all those people met George Harrison. And he was like, he didn't like the new gurus at all. He told Mukunda, like, oh, so now everybody thinks they're a guru. That was what he told Mukunda.
Yeah.
And,
which is true.
Oh, well, 11 people thought they were gurus.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah, so, and I want to just mention my recollection is that women were inferior, their brains were smaller, so they were less intelligent, is what my memory of when I was doing Krishna cases, and Keith Ham, who did the West Virginia temple where the shooting took place, talked about 3 things are best when you beat them: your drum, your dog, and your wife, or something.
Yeah,
am I misquoting him?
No, that's true. He said that. Yeah. That's on film.
I was on a TV show with him, and he was promoting himself. And I was doing my best to say, come on, Jesus didn't sell hash and, abuse women. But,
yeah, well, the drug smuggling was different in every zone.
Yeah.
Like some of the zones had smugglers from the USA. Some of the zones had smugglers from South America. Some of the, they had drug smugglers in China and Thailand and everywhere that were working, because the gurus had their territory was all around the world.
Right.
So
they
depending
carved
on
up the world.
They carved up the world, and then they found out where the drug smugglers would be.
Yeah.
And that got them going.
Yeah.
I feel bad for the people that were drawn into that, because I love them so much. I knew so many of the Laguna Beach drug smugglers because they were working with us. They were our drug smugglers. And they were.
Sorry.
That was the only, it's okay. That's the only crimes I knew about. Right. I mean, I knew like the little things, like when they would go on Sankirtan, like if someone left a package on their table, they had tables where they would give out their pamphlets and stuff. They would take it in the store and return it and keep the money. They wouldn't go in and go, oh, someone left this.
Right.
Anyway, yeah. And then the drug smuggling and then the murders, I wasn't aware of the murders, but since leaving ISKCON, I've done a lot of research, and I've found a lot more murders than what we had. A few of the most important murders in the movie, but not all of the most important murders. There were other ones too, right, that we didn't have time to get into. We didn't have the documentation and other things that we would need, but everything in the movie is documented. It's as accurate as it could possibly be. And it brought it to life for me too, because back in the day, I thought that those murders were basically just headlines.
Right.
Like I read the headline, I read the article, and I knew the people that got killed, but you know how that doesn't quite go through to you, like, oh my God, that guy's dead. Right. And so when we were making the movie, we were doing the murder of Jayatirtha in an antique store because we couldn't get a hardware store as a location. So when I went in there to watch the filming, they go, you have to step over that. And there's the big dead body with the blood on it that they used in the movie. I said, I have to walk over that. And they go, yeah, well, to get over there, you have to walk over that. We're not going to move it. And so I had to kind of like walk over this big cotton dead body of Jayatirtha. And I went, oh my God, he's dead. And it just hit me like so strong while we were doing the movie. I was really shook up about it because I had never it just had really dawned on me what really happened, seeing the reenactment. They cut his head off.
Yeah.
It was
terrible.
a horrible thing. It was really bad.
Yeah. And I just want to comment because I've seen so many documentaries on cults, and the producers are obviously wanting to make a film that's got some sensationalism and clickbaity stuff, and they don't really think about the effects on the former members that they're asking to come for no money and share their experiences. Like, why don't you come to the bridge where you wanted to commit suicide when you were in the cult? And they don't have any consciousness around the trauma that they're triggering in people. And so I've learned to have a certain skepticism when accepting invitations to do documentaries about cults.
Yeah, well, this one was really helpful for me because I'm the type of person who wants to live by the truth. I want to have integrity, and for me to acknowledge that what I was doing in ISKCON was not good. I was helping them cover up things like the people that are covering up for Trump now. That was my role, was to cover up for him and make everything look good. And I'm glad that I could come to terms with that and admit that. And the same thing about the murders. Like I worked for an organization that killed people. And I didn't really come to terms with that until after the movie was made and I was watching it, and I thought, oh, I was part of this. It really hit me, that maybe if I hadn't, they would have had someone else doing my job. But, if I had not been doing that, if I had not been in the group, maybe those people wouldn't have gotten killed because they didn't have a good enough cover up. Like Mukunda was pretty good at doing PR. Yeah. I mean, he was a.
Well, we all did things in the cult that we wish we never did. But, we were doing the best we could at the time with our knowledge and experiences and such. So the good news is you're out, you're a good person. You've been helping people for a long time. You have a great website. And so please, I'd like to ask you, you're watching the news, we're recording this on March 17th of 2025. Like, what are your, as a former PR executive of a cult, how does the world events and events in the U.S. strike you?
Well, I've been really unhappy ever since the election about this, and I was worried about it. But I feel like we have to stand up and resist and not wave the white flag to those people.
Right.
And, like when I was in ISKCON, when I found out about after they killed Sulochan, I found out a lot more about what was going on with the hierarchy. And I decided to stand up to them, and I started printing things in the ISKCON World Review that they didn't like. And then they would complain to us, Badri Dharmayan and Ravindra Swarup and all these other people from the GBC who later became gurus themselves after they... Anyway, they were like telling me to stop doing that. And I was like, okay, try to stop me. And then they couldn't. Finally, they formed a committee in 1988. They formed a committee headed by Ravindra Swarup to come in and stop me from what I was doing. And I was like, all right, I quit. And then I left and wrote a book about them. And then I made a movie about them. So I'm not the type of person that just gives up on something that I really believe in. And I think if Americans could get, especially the elected officials, should get a spine, should stand up. If something happens to you, I've gotten threats from, especially from the movie, but you can't let that stop you. These people are bullies. They're cowards. If you stand up to them, they're frightened of you. Go get them. Go get them.
Exactly.
Don't do violence, but get them through your words.
Yep. And part of my effort is to encourage more people to share their stories. Like, not, you've been in a cult, you've left. Tell people about it, and don't be ashamed and embarrassed. But because I want to create an exit ramp for all the MAGA people
Me too.
who are getting disillusioned and are like, how could I have ever followed that guy? Or,
hello, we were in cults too.
Exactly. It's like, hey, join the human experience. And understand we were doing what we did. That's the past, and now it's the present, and now we know better, and now it's time to do what we can to do correctives and to,
I want to add something to that.
Please.
Like if they have compromise on people, like they have a video of
compromise is the Russian term for blackmail, just to explain
they have blackmail.
To my listeners.
Thank you. So say like you have some senator or something, they have a video of them raping kids, whatever.
With Epstein.
I'm thinking of Lindsey Graham, but, whatever. Somebody, say like somebody's got this compromise.
Yeah.
Well, we're all human beings. What would you rather do? Destroy your country or your reputation? I would destroy my reputation. I have a reputation of being an idiot in a cult. Okay, that's okay. I'm fine with it. Anyone can know.
You're no idiot.
I was.
Yeah.
When I was in ISKCON, I was
right.
kind
I
of
was a
gullible.
Mooney. I was a Mooney who thought that democracy was satanic and we needed to infiltrate the government and create a theocracy and take it over and change the Constitution and make it a capital offense for people who break our rules. I believe that in 74, 75, 76.
But
for me...
They got George Bush. They had George Bush Sr.
Many.
Yeah.
Well, George Bush Sr. was the head of the CIA during the Koreagate investigation that I was a whistleblower for. And the head of that investigation, Robert Betcher, said that he did everything he could to sabotage the investigation. And I later found out why. Because it turned out that the CIA had helped to create the KCIA, the South Korean CIA, and they used the Moonies as a proxy group to do counter brainwashing. Because North Korea was brainwashing people, and there were 2 unsuccessful coups in South Korea, they decided we're going to fight them with fire. So we're going to brainwash dissidents to support the regime because the North Korea is worse. And then when Americans said no to Vietnam War and said we got to get out, they brought the Moonies to the U.S. and put them on college campuses. And that's when I got recruited as part of that anti-communism thrust. And my friend Alan Tate Wood, who was the head of politics for the Moonies at the time, was given money by Chuck Colson straight from Nixon's campaign to reelect the president to set up CARPs on college campuses. So I got recruited and I recruited others. But the reason I'm going into it now is the Moonies are still players in the cult of Trump. Yeah. The Council for National Policy put the Moonies' first editor into the Washington Times. And it turns out the Washington Times has been the largest climate science denial propaganda tool on Earth.
Yeah.
And
we got to get in tune with reality here, like there's so many cults. Like yesterday I was seeing some friends at a party and it just said like, our country is so divided now that either you're in a cult or a good friend of yours is in a cult. Everyone.
Or family members in a cult.
Family members.
Right.
People that you care about. I care about my friends that, have been pulled into this. And I try not to argue with them. Like if they were in a cult, I wouldn't argue with them. I would just be there for them if they're ever ready to leave.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't try to tell them off or tell them what you're doing is wrong because I know that doesn't really help. Unless it's sometimes if you're on the verge of leaving. I remember one time when I was really disappointed in ISKCON during the last few months I was there, I ran into this neighbor in the laundromat at our apartment. And she said, I was wearing a sari and she said, do you think those people are really honest? do you think that you should be with those people that your Hare Krishna people? Don't you think there's something wrong with them? And I defended them, but then later I thought about it. It really stuck in my head. I can still see that in my head.
Very
this woman
interesting.
telling me, you've got to get away from this. And I eventually did soon after that, pretty soon after that.
So you're bringing up a really important point, which is you never know. You're planting a seed, and sometimes, even though I too say don't confront the leader, don't attack the leader, the doctrine, or the group head on, don't try to persuade through facts and reason, build rapport and trust, express curiosity, listen, ask them their story. When did they meet the group? What attracted them? What is their future? Do they think about what they may want to do if they don't stay in the group and such, and talk and just reestablish a connection with these folks, because so many Democrats have cut off contact with family and friends because they were getting inundated to be persuaded into the cult of Trump, and they just said, I can't take it anymore, and block them. Time to say, hi, I miss you. How you doing?
I've thought of that. Like, I have a few friends that I've not because of Trump, but I have other friends that I've kind of cut off from. And I thought, maybe that's not the best way to live. But, if someone abuses you or something in your life, you don't want to go back and talk to them.
Right. Well, that's always another very important point, which is don't try to help other people at your expense.
Right.
If they're traumatizing you and acting disrespectfully, or you don't feel safe, then that's a reason to not have contact. But too many people just got angry and just started calling names, but we need to create an off-ramp for people. Hey, we're Americans,
I agree. I think that woman who talked to me in the laundromat, I think the one strength that she had was that we didn't know each other. We hadn't met each other. I only met her that one time.
I see.
And she talked some truth to me. And not in a mean way. She was concerned about me. I could hear it in her voice. And that she was right. I understood that too. So, we don't want to go and make someone feel bad.
Right.
You don't want to go and go, hey, you're the worst group that's ever hit. You just want someone to tell you, I care. You shouldn't trust those people. They're they're off. And if you try to do that with a relative, they may not listen to you.
Right.
Because, they just don't. It's a family thing. You don't want to go around telling people what to do. But if it's a stranger who's an empathetic person that can see that you're suffering, and you tell them what you think, then that could help. Even if you never see them again, you might plant a seed in their mind. Yeah. And with your relatives, you have to just, I don't talk to my relatives. I have 2 siblings, and my mother's gone, but she was a Trumpster, and a few other relatives that are like that. And I don't bring up politics with them, hoping that somehow they'll change and they might need to talk to me about something. Right. So I want to keep the door open with them.
Always keep the door open, but I'm an advocate for asking warm questions. I'm curious. And with Trump people nowadays, I like to ask them things like, I'm curious, what do you make of what Elon Musk is doing? Or do you agree with Steve Bannon? Or what's your sense? Just to get them thinking and then trying to formulate a response to me as a positive.
Yeah, well, we'll see what they do, because a lot of people have already lost faith in him because they've fired their uncle, or they've cut off their medical care, whatever's going to happen.
Exactly. People are getting fired.
Yeah, people are getting, it's horrible the way they're gutting our government. Oh, my
it's
God.
Terrible. And a lot of veterans are now without a job.
I know. And a lot of people of color. And
yes. And women are now less equal.
Oh, talking about women in the cult, I just want to explain that, like, I did not know when I was in ISKCON, I didn't know about the child abuse and I didn't know about the abuse of women. There was a lot of abuse going on. I mean, I heard it. I heard them talk about it in the classes and things. The higher up people had very low opinions of women. But because I was a feminist, I never really believed what they said. And I didn't understand that there was a lot of abuse going on at the time. They were also saying those horrible things about women. Every once in a while, they had this thing where men would spit on the ground, like they were supposed to spit when they saw a woman. Okay, so there were a lot of times when I'd be walking around Watsika and men would spit, like they'd look at me and then spit on the ground. And I just took it as an insult. I didn't really know that there was violence going on. And I found out that later, actually much later. I had a friend that went through a really abusive marriage and had 3 children and poverty, complete poverty, no help from the husband, no help from the organization. She had to give birth on her own, like at home. Nobody took her. It was a horrible experience. And her children one of the children was damaged physically because of the way that. And so I learned about it the hard way after years of being away out of ISKCON. But when I was in ISKCON, I didn't have a problem with that. Like where I worked, I had people respected me. They appreciated me. I felt really like I belonged there. And I didn't. Go ahead. I
was just going to say you were in PR, so they needed you to be in a bubble so you could be positive to the outside world.
I didn't do too good at that. They never let me talk to reporters.
Okay.
I was a writer. I'm not really a talker. I do writing a lot better than talking.
Okay. But they still valued you because of you.
It was like, let me explain about the PR office. I think that all of us were not in favor of the violence, not in favor of the murders, not in favor of the crimes or the guns. But because we had this job to do, we tried to do it. Like we were trying to be good devotees. And my boss thought that, we should protect ISKCON. He's still very dedicated to Prabhupada. And he was there from the beginning and he wanted to help save ISKCON going through this stage. And we all followed him. We were all taken advantage of. Yes. There was no one in our department that was like a spy for the gurus. We were just doing this work for them because we thought it would help ISKCON. We were not in favor of the crimes at all. And it was only after I left that I realized that was wrong, what we did. Yeah. We should have stood up more and earlier. Or I should have left earlier.
You should have left, right.
Because you can't fix it. It's like trying to fix your family of origin. You can't fix your family. They're not going to change because you try to fix them.
Yeah, I would argue as a family therapist that you can't make changes in families, but I know what you mean.
Well, if you go to a counselor and everyone wants to change,
guilty.
The counselor can help. I've done that with my family. I brought my parents to counseling meetings once in a while, and it does help. So there are ways to ameliorate things, but you can't on your own go and fix your family of origin.
Right, that's so true.
And the PR office couldn't fix ISKCON. And we didn't have to. And we should have all left. We all did leave. The department broke up after 86. In 86, when Sulochan was murdered, the whole PR office before the murder got up and moved to Laguna Beach. Because Mukunda said, Ramaswar's, getting weird. We got to get out of here. So, and then later Mukunda moved to San Diego, and then he moved to Australia, and then he moved to New Zealand, and he got out of that job. He's no longer the head of that. And then this guy, Amanudamo, comes along and picks it up. Oh, this looks like a good job. No.
So let's switch for a minute. Talk about your Cult Survivor's Handbook, because I've been interviewing lots of people, Joe Zimhart, And I just have an interview with a woman in the Kabbalah Center. She was raised as a child in it, who left and became a college professor. Talk about what you've learned about, what's your advice to cult survivors?
Okay, when I wrote this book, I was like freshly out of grad school. So I made every chapter was about something I learned in grad school, working with the juveniles. So family therapy, obviously, family therapy is the best kind of therapy that an ex-member can get because it's like a family, being in a cult. And also you have family issues. You have to do abuse recovery. You need to find, like, if you were abused in any way, we were all abused in some ways. Verbal abuse was the main thing I got from the guru, my guru.
Right.
So we have to work, if we were abused, we have to acknowledge that and work on that with a counselor. Depth psychology, which was a Jungian thing where you could find meaning from your life through your dreams and symbols and things that happen to you that are like numinous to you, that bring in your spirituality. So depth psychology. One of the most effective things that I learned about in grad school was the 12 steps. I don't think that I don't recommend joining a 12-step group because they can get culty if they're off track. But if you read the 12 steps and you follow them yourself or with a counselor, the 12 steps are really good for cleansing out the guilt and the bad things that you did in the cult. You come to terms with it. You can, get by that. Then mind body healing, like instead of, like, a lot of people just like, oh, well, I'll just get a prescription for and I'll be fine, or I'll start drinking alcohol, or I'll smoke, I smoke pot, so I'm not being hypocritical, but mind body healing would be like the thoughts in your head are the chemicals. What you have to change is the thoughts, and you need a community, and then you can get over your your emotional issues without taking drugs. I also believe in art therapy, especially Gestalt art therapy, which is the form of art therapy that I studied in grad school. And that the Gestalt art therapy is where you don't, like, the facilitator doesn't interpret your painting for you and go, oh, well, this is, Freud would say, like the facilitator would just say, what does this mean to you? How did you feel when you were doing this? And then the most difficult thing for a lot of cult members is their spirituality. Because, like, if you were in a Christian cult and then you leave, you might, like, turn your back on Jesus or on religion in general. And the same thing with ISKCON. If you were, like, grew up in ISKCON, say, and they tortured you as a child, you're not going to be like a Krishna devotee, because that was you were,
or maybe not abused. Even like meditation or Indian,
anything like that. So
or being a vegetarian,
anything like that, like taking your shoes off even to go inside. So I suggest that people just find their own center. Don't feel like guilty because you don't believe in this or that you were supposed to believe in. You have to find your own spirituality too.
Good advice.
That's about it.
Yeah. I'm curious about your I Ching work. Tell us about that.
Oh, God. Well, as a child a flower child growing up, we all had the I Ching, of course, and we would all throw our I Ching and then read our fortunes. And I one time went to Hong Kong, and I went to a temple where they were throwing the sticks. And so I've always believed in the I Ching. I've used it since the 60s. And so it's a long story, but my brother and my husband and I were going to do a where you could call people. They had the 899 numbers or whatever it was, 911. Yeah. So we were going to do online I Ching where you could call in and get your thing.
You and pay you?
They would call a friend of my brother's had a load of these numbers. So we were going to do a telephone I Ching. So the first thing we had to do was to write our own I Ching so that we wouldn't be, using someone else's. So I got like 5 copies of the I Ching and put them on my desk. And then I went through each one and wrote my own version of it. Like I would study each of the 5 books and then write my own I Ching from what I understood from it.
Interesting.
And then it just went in a drawer because after that it would have been too expensive for the software and all that.
Just a project.
Yeah,
an idea.
The only thing that got done was the book. And then I kept it in a drawer for about 10 years. And then when I started building websites, I put it on my website.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the software free because a friend of mine just made the software for me and it's still working. So it was fun, though. It was a really fun writing project. It took me months to do it.
Yeah. Creative works and writing is your thing and such. So I guess I want to circle back to is there more points that we should cover with either ISKCON itself or its policies? I mean, I think that there are still many temples around the world, aren't they, in different countries?
No? I think there are a lot of temples, and especially in India. The way I see ISKCON now is that it's still a cult, and if they didn't want to be a cult, they could easily remove the criminals from the hierarchy. They've got criminals still, not criminals. They've never been convicted. Bad actors, thank you.
Yes.
And so they
haven't been tried and convicted, so we can't say.
We can't call them criminals, but they're just bad actors. Okay, so they're in the GBC, they're gurus, they're sannyasis, and they're kshatriyas. And what the kshatriya is the caste system, the Indian caste system. The kshatriyas are the warriors. And they are the ones that go out and kill people for the gurus. And so those people are still around. And, a lot of them in Los Angeles were my friends because when I was a devotee, I didn't know about all this. And they were just people that protected our community. And I knew they had
what they were told.
They had a gun closet, And so anyway, and I've talked to these people recently because when we were doing the research for the movie, we interviewed probably about 30 devotees just to, fortify the
ex-devotees or devotees?
Both. Both and all. We interviewed a lot of people. We interviewed people from New Vrindavan, from Los Angeles, and we interviewed a lot of the kids. I still call them kids, even though they're in their 50s.
Grown up, right.
Yeah.
New Vrindavan was the West Virginia temple?
New Vrindavan was that place. When I was a member, we knew what was going on in New Vrindavan. We knew that there was a lot of dishonest stuff going there, and that there was a lot of we knew that there was something wrong with that place. We'll put it that way.
The
leader was crazy, and all the devotees were like really fanatical, and they would, had to raise a lot of money for their golden temple and all that.
And it just dawns on me, I interviewed this fellow who was involved with the group. Did you know him? You're smiling.
Oh, yeah, I met him. Yeah, he's a close friend, I'd say. Henry was a disciple of Kirtanananda, and he had an okay time. He wasn't involved. He was like a music person. He did Sankirtan, traveling Sankirtan, so he was always out of town.
Fundraising.
Fundraising. That means fundraising.
Yeah.
So he would be out on the road with a crew, raising money. And then when he retired from that, they made him the head of a choir, and he's a musician. He's a really, really good musician. And so he didn't suffer in ISKCON at all. He had a good time there. And I noticed his development over years that I've known him, that he's become more aware of what the problems were in New Vrindavan.
Yeah.
But for most of us, like one time I remember we were at, in the LA temple, and we were at the morning program, and there was a whole bunch of people from West Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
from New Vrindavan, that were traveling through our zone, which
Mm-hmm.
the gurus would get really mad if people would try to fundraise in their zone.
Mm-hmm.
So there they were. And so we kind of shunned them. Like the women, the women all had to be at the back of the room or upstairs in the balcony.
Mm-hmm.
And all these New Vrindavan women were there. And you could tell them they look more like, they weren't dressed nice. Like they had pretty messed up.
Right.
They were kind of messed up people too.
Right.
So we knew what was going on with these people.
Right.
And it was just another one of those situations where it was bad apples. Like
Right.
It wasn't systemic. We weren't supposed to believe there was anything wrong with ISKCON. It was just these certain people that were a bad apple.
Yeah. I got to confess, from the outside, it just looks like it was always a cult and there were problems with it from the beginning. And,
I know. There were.
And behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotional control, and obedience, and cut off from your family and your passion and all your interests, and surrender. And tell if there's somebody who's thinking of joining right now, and they've been asked to watch this interview, what words of wisdom might you suggest for this person, whether it's a male or a female?
Well, I think really the important thing is to be the pilot of your own life. You're the captain of your own boat.
Mm-hmm.
You decide what your life should be. And if you're looking for spirituality, it's everywhere. Just go look at the ocean or the forest and, feel grateful for the stars and the planets. And, like that spirituality is all around us. You don't have to join a group to be spiritual. Maybe you should read some books and, but before, especially these Christian groups, oh God, there's just so much, like my ancestors were Lutheran ministers. I had a whole bunch of them. My mother's family, fanatical Lutherans, which is a cult in itself, especially the Missouri Synod, which is where our family was from. But I just think that the way that these Christian groups have evolved is really depressing. And I think my ancestors would be rolling over in the grave if they knew what kind of things people interpret as Christian. Because Jesus wanted to help the poor and help the sick and help not cause trouble for people.
Right.
And then they just ignore Jesus. I'm a Christian, but I don't know anything about Jesus. Sorry.
Right. Or they're like, I'm an apostle. God talks to me. I'm a prophet.
That's the other thing, is the channel. Oh, I can hear spirits talking to me. I got to write this down. Yeah, I went through that myself. I don't believe in that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm unloading a whole bunch of old books that I had that were kind of cultish, esoteric, new age, channeled. People channel their books and some spirit writes it for them. Yeah. So I'm just going to donate all those to UCSB. And so if someone wants to look up some pretty culty stuff, they can go there and look.
So do you live in Santa Barbara now?
Oh God, I wish. No, I live in Phoenix. I live in Tempe, Arizona, which is a suburb of Phoenix.
Yes.
It's very red here. I'm not totally comfortable here, but I like where I live and I like my neighbors. And
so, that's good.
Yeah.
It's warmer than Boston, I can assure you.
Yeah, especially in the summer.
Yeah, especially in the summer. So, I don't know. I guess I want to circle back to what would you say to someone who's thinking of joining?
ISKCON?
Yeah.
I talk to people about that all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, people write to me. Like they go to my website and they see that I've got
book,
doubts.
Betrayal of the Spirit.
It should tell something about how I think about it. So, so they write to me and they tell me that, they're thinking of joining. I love to answer these letters too. That's one of the good things about being an author is people write to you. And I just ask them, like, what are you looking for? What's it like for you? How deeply do you want to get involved in it?
Right.
And I don't I never tell them not to join. I just tell them what I think.
Right.
So they just want my opinion. They don't want me to tell them what to do. So,
right.
And I'm not a counselor. I'm a researcher.
Right.
Like I was trained as a counselor, a juvenile counselor, but I don't think I can fix other people's lives. I'm just not, it's not part of my thing. So I became a researcher, and a researcher writer is what I think of myself as. And so I like to do research. I like to talk to people who are kind of on that moment where they're trying to decide something, and just give them, tell them what I think. Right. I don't ever tell them not to join. I just tell them, be careful, or don't, I give them warnings, but I don't tell them what to do.
Right. Well, I like to also encourage people to keep their eyes open. Mm-hmm. Don't silence your inner voice. If you feel there's something wrong going on, don't squash it or put it out of your mind or chant it out of existence. But if you feel like there's something wrong, investigate it. And sometimes it's good to take a time out and, take a break and reflect on your experiences.
Yeah, I think ISKCON is people who are going to join ISKCON often leave because it's kind of an unfriendly attitude there. I think Gilbert talked about that in the movie. He said on a day-to-day basis, you get yelled at, you get told off by your peers, like if you're new and you're not supposed to turn your back on the deities, right? Say like someone turns around and they're talking to you and you go, you can't turn your back to the deities. And you get yelled at all the time. Uh-huh. And it's not a friendly, so they'll be nice to you at first, like the love bombing thing, they'll be real until you join and you're hooked. Then they just treat you like everyone else. Right. And that's painful. I mean, people leave. They're like, this isn't right. I'm not this person they think I am. And they leave. And that's what you have to do. You have to have self-esteem. If you have no self-esteem and you join ISKCON, maybe it could help you get some self-esteem because you're going to get beaten up by them. I disagree. I don't think you're going to get self-esteem in a cult. I think people should join the cult just to get in immunity from cults. Well, that I'll buy into, but I don't think you're ever going to get self-esteem by being in a mind control cult and abused. I did. You'll have a pseudo identity, but you won't have a self that's yourself. I don't know. Steve, you can disagree with me. Disagreed on these things. You can disagree with me. When I was in ISKCON, the reason I joined ISKCON was to have a family. Like I grew up as the black sheep, the juvenile delinquent in my family. Everyone kind of disowned me. It wasn't a good situation for me. It might have been a lot in my head, but, my family didn't really show much affection to me growing up. That's so sad. It's okay. I'm cool with it. That's just the way our family was. So, when I joined ISKCON, I got that job. Gelberg got me that job with Mukunda. And it was family. I liked those people. Mm-hmm. And we were all pretty sane. We dealt with the outside world all the time because we did a newspaper and we'd always have to be dealing with the publisher, or the photo lab, or, all kinds of people outside of ISKCON. And so we had kind of a grasp on reality. And I met my husband there, and I love him. He's the love of my life. We're kind of back together. And I have friends there. Like in The Monkey on a Stick, 7 of my friends agreed to be in that movie. And they were in the movie. We were going to have Henry too, but he got sick, which was really sad. He was really sick and couldn't come. But we had my friends. I still have friends from those years. Mm-hmm. I had a good time. I had, apart from the crimes, which I didn't take seriously at the time, I mean, I feel almost guilty that I had a good time in ISKCON. I had a good experience.
Well, it sounds like you, from my point of view, you were in a compartment of this big cult. And so you only knew what you knew. It was like you were in a bubble. And that bubble was minimally offensive and intrusive to you. So, but I would say you were atypical from all the people I've talked to who were, just really, speculation is evil. You're not allowed to speculate.
Well, I kind of thank Mukunda for being the leader that he was of our department. He protected us. He shielded us from that kind of abuse. People couldn't yell at us. The only guy that would yell at us was Ramaswar, the guru. His office was directly across from our office. Like our front door was his front door. And then in the patio, his side door was our side door. And he would just come busting into our office all the time and just yell at us. What do you think you're doing here? I thought we had a deadline. You've got to get out to the Sankirtan. You can't, he would just come in and randomly yell at us. He used to call me a stupid woman. You have a guru that calls you stupid woman. You're a stupid woman. Look what he would yell at us. That was, and I kind of took it like, oh, what an asshole. Like, I couldn't wait. He left and I was like, bye. And then, by the time he left, I was so tired of him yelling at me.
Yeah.
Verbal abuse. If it happened now, I just say, I can't take this kind of language. I'll talk to you when you're feeling better. Bye.
Yeah.
That's how you just got to dismiss it. Like, you don't take that verbal abuse. Ever. From anyone.
It's true. It's really true. So, as we're wrapping up, any final thoughts about Trump or the time we're living in? Or
this is a very difficult time. And I believe that because the World War II was 80 years ago, my father was in World War II. He was a photographer. He photographed the Nuremberg trials. And so I understood what was going on there in Germany. There was fascism, and they were trying to take over Europe. And so we're going through a very, very similar thing now. And that the younger generations who are now adults, which is generations XYZ, are going to learn this lesson that you have to stand up to fascism. You can't just let it roll over you. You have to stand up. And then for the next 80 years, hopefully these three generations, X, Y, and Z, will keep the peace. There's going to be the adults in the world going forward. The baby boomers were going to be gone. And it'll be left to them to remember this time. If we get through it, we get our democracy back, hopefully. Doesn't look that way now.
I see the time is critical because once it goes, it's going to take a really long time.
It's going to shut off. Oh.
No, I mean, I think if we can't do something now in the next month or two.
Yes.
I hear people saying, don't do anything, like James Carville. Let's just wait till they implode. Wrong. Or we'll wait for the the midterm elections.
That's
wrong.
Too far away. Yeah, we'll be gone by then. They're erasing our government. It takes a long time to build something, and it takes apparently 8 weeks to tear it down. So we need to act now. We need to be protesting. We need to be doing art, resisting, doing our thing, not letting it upset us, do our work.
Yes,
what your work is. Like
especially if you're
here.
A former member and you've experienced the mind control cult, you have a story to share.
Yes.
Share it with someone in MAGA. Ask what they think of that.
Talking to MAGA people, it's like talking to cult members, and they can be so mean and verbally abusive. I got in a fight with these two MAGA women once while the election was going on. They were pro anti-choice. They had these T-shirts. I didn't realize at first, but they were MAGA people, and they started like kind of drawing me in and getting me more and more angry, and I was getting angry at them, and they were getting angry at me. It was like wrestling a pig in a mud puddle. Don't argue with these people. If they start to argue with you, just go bye, because you're not going to change them. You have to look for the people that are more open-minded, that don't know exactly what's going on. Like, gee, are they going to kick my grandma out of the hospital? She's on Medicaid.
Right.
They're worried. Those are the kind of people that you can talk to.
Right. And the other thing is, you're not going to be as successful with two people, because they're going to want to reinforce each other and not look bad to each other. But I want to thank you, Nori Muster. Let's hold up your book again, Betrayal of the Spirit, and your book helping the children who are born in the cult.
Child of the cult. This is one chapter on ISKCON in this book.
So you covered other cults in that book.
Yeah.
Which other cults as we're wrapping up?
I've got the Moonies. I've got I've got like 5 different cults. The Moonies, Children of God, Ann Stamler's group. I interviewed her. It's a good collection.
Aesthetic realism.
Realism. Yeah.
And so, I did that cult.
I was going to do a whole book just about ISKCON, but the children didn't. They wanted to do their own book, and they didn't want me to write it. But when I said I just want to do one chapter on ISKCON, they were like, "Okay, yeah, do that." And I interviewed. So it shows the similarities between the different cults, how the cult abuse worked. I did TM.
And I'll let you know that I'm doing a survey now. BiteModel.com will offer a free anonymous 40-question survey of I fully agree or I disagree on behavior, information, thought, and emotional control. And it will literally give you a number on the influence continuum. And no one knows your name and no one knows who you are, but put your name of the group in because we're gathering data.
I always fill out those surveys. I think the research that's being done is just phenomenal.
Yeah, it's really important.
It is. Yeah, we need statistics.
So thank you so much, Nori Muster.
Oh, so good to see you, Dr. Steve.
Okay, take care.
You too.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Steve Hassan here. It's been decades since my family rescued me from the Moonies. I've been at this for over 47 years. The need has never been greater. If you're able, please consider hitting the super thanks button below, and it'll help us to do better. Every penny will help us toward our goal of educating the planet about undue influence. Remember, it's your mind. Only you should control it.